Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to dig into the ideas from New Cultural Studies, a book that really gets to the heart of a feeling I think a lot of us have. The world has changed dramatically, but our ways of understanding it, well, they just haven't kept up.
So, let's just dive right in with this question. It really gets to the core of everything. It's that nagging feeling in the back of your head, that the rules we all thought we knew about politics, about society, even about our own lives, just don't seem to fit anymore. It's like we're using old, faded maps to navigate a brand new world.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at this problem of our old maps. Then, we'll see how this whole crisis is actually playing out inside universities. That'll lead us to ask a big question. Is theory even useful anymore? And from there, we'll explore some new tools we might need to actually start building a different future.
So, part one, let's really get into the core problem here. It's this deep, profound sense of political and cultural disorientation. You know that feeling? It's like we're stuck between a world we don't really believe in anymore and a new one we can't quite see yet.
Think about the big bedrock ideas that kind of built the modern world. This unwavering belief in constant progress, the idea of a single objective truth, the concept of stable sovereign nations. The book argues that, deep down, we've lost our faith in these pillars. But here's the crazy part. Our political systems are still acting as if they're perfectly intact. And that creates this huge, jarring disconnect.
And this quote from political theorist Wendy Brown just nails it. It perfectly captures our collective paradox. It's like we're all running on an outdated operating system, and it's causing all sorts of glitches. A sense of aimlessness, or even worse, what she calls political moralism, where we just end up judging each other instead of trying to figure out what's actually going on.
Okay, so this crisis isn't just some abstract thing floating in the air. It has very real, very tangible effects, especially for the people whose job it is to think and teach. Yeah, the university, once thought of as this quiet space for deep reflection, is now right in the thick of it, feeling the heat from all these larger shifts.
So a whole new model has popped up. The academic is a cultural entrepreneur. The pressure is on to think like a startup founder. You got to brand yourself, find profitable research angles, basically turn your ideas into sellable products. And that fundamentally changes what it even means to think for a living.
And this paints a pretty stark picture of that day-to-day reality. It's a total pressure cooker. Academics are being driven by this audit culture that's just demanding constant, measurable output. It leaves almost no time, no space, for the deep, slow, reflective thinking you actually need to come up with genuinely new ideas.
So you can see how this leads to a pretty central conflict, right? When you're facing all these urgent crises, climate change, political instability, you name it, what's the point of complex abstract theory? Isn't it just a distraction, a waste of time when we need to be taking action? Like yesterday?
I mean, look at the timeline. The end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st just brought one shock after another. After huge events like the fall of the Berlin Wall, and especially after September 11th, the call for direct action and simple, straightforward answers got a whole lot louder, and that pushed all the complex, messy ideas to the side.
And this one single cutting phrase, man, it just captures that whole mood perfectly. It frames these really complex philosophies like deconstruction, the ones that question the very foundations of truth and meaning, as this self-indulgent luxury. Something from a more naive, pre-crisis world. The feeling was, we just don't have time for this anymore.
But here's the big pivot. What if that's completely backwards? What if this moment of crisis is precisely when we need better thinking tools, not fewer of them? What if our old ways of seeing the world are actually part of the problem, and we need brand new concepts just to see things clearly again?
Check this out. Thinkers Hart and Negri point out this really strange paradox of our time. We are more globally connected than ever before, right? We can watch protests and uprisings unfold in real time on the other side of the planet. But somehow, seeing all that struggle doesn't really translate into lasting global solidarity. So, why is that? And this is exactly where a theory becomes absolutely essential. It gives us the language to understand why this weird disconnect happens. It explains why, even though we can see everything, the struggles happening in one place just don't seem to connect with the struggles happening somewhere else. We're missing a shared framework to see how it might all be part of a common fight.
Okay, here's another really powerful tool, this one from the philosopher Giorgio Agamben. He talks about how power can create a state of exception, where it can basically strip people of all their rights, reducing them to what he calls bare life. They're just living human bodies with no political or legal protections whatsoever.
And look, this concept isn't just abstract philosophy. It has powerful modern relevance. It gives us a really precise way to analyze the logic behind places like Guantanamo Bay or certain asylum detention centers. These zones of exception where people are shoved into a legal black hole, completely stripped of their rights.
All right, let's look at one final tool that really helps make sense of our polarized world. It's this idea of antagonism. It basically suggests that a group often figures out who we are, not by what we stand for, but by what we stand against.
Think about that for a second. You are what threatens you. It's a simple but incredibly powerful idea, and it helps explain the rise of that political moralism we talked about earlier. Our identity becomes totally dependent on having an enemy, an other that we can define ourselves against. It's a logic you see playing out all over the place today.
So where does all this leave us? We have all these new tools for analysis, all these new ways of seeing the problems. So what? What's the end game? Well, the argument is that it's not enough to just critique the world. The real challenge is to help build a new one.
The source makes a really cool comparison to the architect Rem Koolhaas, who talks about being deeply frustrated with his own field. He feels like architecture has become way too passive, too slow, too content with just commenting on the world instead of getting its hands dirty and actively shaping it.
And that frustration leads to this call for a new kind of cultural studies, one that isn't afraid to take risks, to make commitments, to build. It's a call to move from just taking things apart to actually trying to construct something new, to propose different ways for us to think and live. And this powerful idea from Raymond Williams, one of the founders of cultural studies, really frames the massive task ahead. He reminds us that, yeah, the work is incredibly complex. But that complexity isn't a reason to give up. It's the necessary path we have to walk to build something new, something truly liberating.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? The core argument here is that in a world where all the old certainties are collapsing around us, we can't afford not to think deeply. So the real question becomes, what new tools will you forge to make sense of it all?